Alrighty, we are live. It's Sunday morning, Sydney time, 11 a.m. I've woken up wondering, did I dream all of the shenanigans that went on overnight in the UAE? Australia absolutely hammered by England in the T20 World Cup. Now, just while everybody's joining the broadcast, how are you, Paul?
Oh, I was upbeat during the Aussie innings. I really was. I thought this is a tough pitch.
All right, started with a
You and
comedy joke.
Jaleesa. No, I was. I honestly thought this is a tough pitch, and Australia's batted okay. And I didn't think Australia was going to win, but I thought that they were going to make a real fight of it, and that it was going to be, it could have been interesting. And I thought that I'd saved some text messages that you and Jaleesa had sent, and I wasn't going to put them to air without your permission, but I was going to ask for your permission and then sort of invite everyone to have a giggle at how pessimistic you were. I'm not going to do that now.
Usually it's Jaleesa releasing the DMs. Jaleesa, she's not here today, and she seemed pretty fired up about the result, pretty disconsolate. So I look forward to hearing her thoughts later in the week. So yeah, just the way these broadcasts work is if you want to leave a comment, the best place is to go onto YouTube and watch there, and then you can leave questions and comments, and we'll get to them at the end of the show. Sorry, last broadcast, Paul and I forgot to get to the comments, but we will today. So any questions for us, put them in the comments. And as I've said, we're going to release this audio on our podcast feeds, but the best way is subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then when we do a broadcast, you get a notification that we're going live, and you can watch them as they go to air. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, Paul, I've been pretty down on this Australian T20 side, and I tried to fake some optimism last time we spoke, but this was every fear of mine coming to life. We panicked at the selection table before the game. We played so poorly on the field. We looked like the golfing class was ginormous. It was just a shocking performance, and I think this sort of actually gives us a gauge of where our T20 side is at.
Well, I mean, it's hard to. I don't agree with you, but I can't. It's hard to muster the strength to disagree with you because at the moment the facts are very much on your side. I think what it also shows is that England are magnificent, and that maybe, as it transpires, they are the best in the world by some margin, and that we are in the scrum, in the sort of in the pack for second and third best, and as low down as sixth or seventh best. But I'm looking for positives. The England batting performance was one where they were able to take their maxim of let's just back ourselves right to the limit, because they knew that if they lost 3 or 4 quick wickets, they could then consolidate and still win. And they just said, let us give our net run rate and then an enormous boost. And in so doing, accidentally on purpose, give the Australian net run rate a colossal destruction. And that's my biggest sadness, that last show, and we might have to destroy any evidence of last show, I was jubilant about the fact that I said Australia could lose to England and the West Indies, and because we've already won and we'll probably beat Bangladesh, we'll still make the semi-finals. So, Menners, how do you feel about that? Now, I've gone back to that same predictor, and Australia, even if we win both games, there's a chance that we won't qualify, because we're going to be relying on our old friends England to beat South Africa. Now, if South Africa are kind of able to beat England, maybe England should just forfeit the match to have a bit of a laugh at our expense. Because of the damage that's been done to our net run rate, then we could be in some significant trouble. So far from being able to say, we could probably lose to West Indies and we'll still make it, we definitely must win our final 2 matches. If we do that, I still think we will qualify. And so, I may yet get to go back to those text messages and pump them out. And if we ultimately win the World Cup, but it's hard to be so positive about it at this juncture. Let's put it that way.
It's such a bad performance, and like you sort of speak about what Australia could do from here. South Africa seemed to be actually improving as the tournament's going on, so I think they could be a real shake to get that second spot. And then the West Indies, they're due a good performance.
Worst thing is for me is that the South Africa Sri Lanka game, I idly was cheering South Africa on because I'd had a tiny bet on South Africa, and I was like, joyously cheering them on as they just scraped home over the line. If I could have my time back, I wouldn't have cheered them on. That might have been enough to get them beaten. So, yeah, and you're right. The West Indies are starting to move into things they on this form they could give us a thrashing as well.
Yeah, so I think my prediction of Australia not making the semi-finals is becoming more and more likely. Let's go back to the beginning of the game last night. I thought Australia made a massive blunder, leaving out who did they leave out? Mitch
Mitchell
Marsh,
Marsh.
and bringing in Ashton Agar. So they shortened the batting. They, for some reason, added an extra bowler. I actually don't think there's much difference between Agar and Glenn Maxwell. I think they're much of a muchness, but you lose a lot when you take out a batter. And it was, to me, what annoys me about that selection, Paul, is it just reeks of panic and uncertainty about the way we play T20 cricket. For our first two games, we go in with 4 specialist bowlers, 3 all-rounders, which gives us, 7 batters. So all of a sudden we come to the biggest game of the tournament so far, and we change that for some reason. I mean, what is Langer thinking? What is Finch thinking? In a game where we actually needed that extra batter, we didn't have it. I mean, we needed Wade at 7 there with those early wickets. It would have given the top order way more confidence to at least try and get a competitive total. And for some reason, they throw that all out the window, pick Agar, he's just not a strong performer, and I just think it reeked of panic. And what are we going to do the rest of the World Cup? Do they even know? Is it 4 bowlers? Is it 5 bowlers? Is it see how they feel on the day? I mean, you should know this in a World Cup.
I mean, I sympathise with you, Manners, because you did miss the opportunity of seeing Mitch Marsh nick the first slip off his second ball last night. That is something that you have been robbed of. You can watch through the highlights and see it many times in the past, though. But I hear you. Look, it's 11 o'clock. I was so tired. I slept till almost just now. I haven't read everything. There was some speculation that Mitch Marsh's little injury was the reason that he didn't play. Have you read anything this morning to confirm that? That would be an explanation.
I haven't read anything about that, and
because that's what Simon Gould was speculating.
Fair enough. Well, that wasn't the reason I was given, but I haven't seen anywhere in the coverage.
Yeah, it was just strange the way that they spoke about it at the toss, and that's what gave the Simon Gould the feeling that maybe that his injury was a little bit worse than we'd been led to believe, and that he was being a bit coy with things. Now, as for the rest of the tournament, they've got to bring Swepson in, surely.
Yeah, they should bring Swepson in. Or I mean, even last night, why not Inglis? Why not stick to the same structure and stick Inglis in as your 7th batter, and you've still got Stoinis and Maxwell to bowl those 4 overs. So a blunder, and it was the worst possible start for Australia. If you want to lose a T20 game, being basically 4 for 21 after 6.1 overs with Warner, Smith, Maxwell and Stoinis all in the sheds. Just the worst possible start to a game. Warner was out off the second ball of Chris Wokes' first over. Just a nick to the keeper. A point was made on the coverage that Warner's footwork seemed lacking in that shot. And, is Warner really is Warner really back in form?
Well, I think it wasn't lacking in the sense of there was plenty of it. It was just lacking in quality. He was down a metre and a half down the pitch to Wokes. I think what it is just that for those few overs, it was as though he was back in England in 2019. The wicket was doing plenty. He's not as good a player under those circumstances. We were lucky to be 4 for 20. We'd had 2 umpires call LBWs that could have gone against us. We could have been 6 for 20.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that one for Finch was clipping half of leg stump, given out. He's back in the sheds. So you go Warner nicks off. Then you get Smith. Played the worst shot to Chris Jordan. Tried to pull a ball from 3 feet outside off stump. And actually, I feel sorry for Smith because, he's playing in a format of the game where, it's not his specialty. He's been asked to play a role that's not his game. He actually, isn't he supposed to be the anchor that bats through the middle overs? So he comes in at 3 when we've lost an early wicket and tries to hit one over the top, which is not his game. That was tailor-made for Mitch Marsh to come out and try and pulverize the first ball. So, terribly bad performance by Smith. And I don't know if you noticed, but Shane Warne fired up on Twitter. Me and Warney are on an island on this one. He laid into Smith saying he shouldn't be in the T20 side. And yeah, I feel sorry for Smith. He's being put in an unfamiliar role in a format that he's not suited to.
Oh, stop. Cut it out. He played one bad shot on a pitch where at that time lots of stuff was happening. I guarantee you Mitch Marsh would have failed if he'd gone out there as well. Yeah, sure, it didn't look great, but that's what happens sometimes. And as for Warney, as with about 4.4 billion people around the world, I haven't seen what he said because he's blocked me years ago for reasons that I don't know. So Warney, if you're watching, unblock me, mate.
Please unblock Paul. Then Glenn Maxwell out for a duck to
that was a bad shot.
Of you, Glenn Maxwell's.
Yeah, my two favourite players are Smith and Maxwell. I'll defend Smith's shot. Maxwell's shot was a poor shot. He should have realised that right there and then. Wokes was bowling almost unplayably, and he needed to chew up a few balls. Often he needs to just take up 10 or 15 balls, and then he's amazing. That was to play that wafty kind of drive at a ball. That was on the cards. Like, I think it was the ball before they scampered for 2 when they might have only got 1. And normally I'd be cheering that on. I was like, oh, I wish they hadn't got 2. I don't want Maxwell on strike this over to Wokes because he's going to try to be playing too expansively. He needs to be humble. It'll get easier. Play that shot and then squander a review on a plum LBW. That was really disappointing.
Yeah, it was a poor shot playing across the line. Marcus Stoinis out LBW to Adil Rashid, not picking the wrong one and hit plumb in front of the stumps. Pretty easy decision there. And
that's, again, sorry to jump in, but that is the big fear I had through the whole tournament. That I said, you must admit, I've got everything wrong. But the one thing I've got right in my predictions is when Marcus Stoinis comes in and the spinners are on and we're struggling, you can expect him to get out quite quickly in a crucial game.
Yeah, and I think you can put a few other Australian batters in that camp where they seem to be exposed when they come up against a really classy spinner in form. So that left Australia 4 for 21 after 6.1 overs. So, that's about 2 a.m. Sydney time. So at this point, I'm like staring blankly into my cup of tea, sort of questioning, life itself and what I'm going to say about this game. And then Matthew Wade and Finchie put on 30, kind of minor recovery. When you sort of look at the context, it wasn't too bad. And then there was a little flurry at the end from Ashton Agar, Pat Cummins, and Mitch Starc. Agar hit 2 sixes, Cummins hit 2 sixes, Mitch Starc hit 1 6 to get us up to 125. I mean, up until that point, I think we'd only hit like 3 boundaries in the innings till about the 15th over. I mean, it was the most diabolical performance. It was like we'd taken pop guns to a gunfight, and we were completely outmatched and very disappointing. And then, sort of Finch. What did you think of Finch's innings?
Well, I must admit, at the innings break, I thought he'd played pretty well. And I thought the fact that he'd been looking to score the whole time and had barely been able to get to a runner ball the entire innings was indicative of how difficult the wicket was. And I remember, I can't remember which commentator sort of said, as Australia hit a 6 towards the end, that's a nice little finish, but this has been all England. And I was thinking, you just wait, this could be quite a competitive total. And in fact, I would actually like to move into an alternative reality. Can we just do this as though England... Yeah, England got bowled out off the last ball, needing 2 to win. Mitchell Starc took 4. Josh Hazlewood 6 for 15. Can you believe it? Right up top.
Amazing. I mean, Finch's captaincy was superb. The way we fought back into the game. I now think we can win the World Cup. This is like the Australian team of the golden generation. We can win from anywhere. It's like the Windies from the 80s, we can bowl out a team for anything. We believe in ourselves. It's like Bradman's batting at 3.
England's, they pumped the easy opposition early on, but now it's just looking
exposed.
Yeah, the England have been exposed for flat track bullies, and also they've got no chance whatsoever winning the Ashes. They've been called off. It's already 5-0. All right, let's go back to reality.
Yeah, go back to reality, unfortunately. So Australia muster 125, bowled out off the last ball of the innings. I guess the sort of disappointment with Finch is when we kind of needed him to blast the quick 30 off 10 balls at the end, he got out. That was the sort of frustration. But he tried. I think he lofted one down the ground and got caught attempting to clear the boundary. So, It's one of those things. Actually, Agar, Cummins, and Stark did pretty well. Cummins hit his first 2 balls for sixes, and you're like, wow. Which follows on from actually some very good IPL form
It
he
does,
showed
yes.
earlier this year.
And it's heartening because as we're trying to take whatever positives we can, but he has been a little bit too defense-minded over recent years, especially in Test cricket, where he's been trying to bat like a batter, and he's a very handy lower order batter, but he's not good enough to be a batter. So he should bat like Stark, and last night he did. And 12 off 2 was a good start.
Yeah, and thank goodness England picked Tymor Mills, 4 overs, 2 for 45. He went at 11.25 and over. The other 4 bowlers, Adil Rashid, 4.75 economy rate. Chris Wokes, 5.75. Chris Jordan, 4.25. Liam Livingston, 3.75. So then, okay, I'm with you. It's the halfway break. We've sort of mustered, it actually didn't look like we were going to get 100. So we get to 125. And I wasn't confident. I had no feeling that Australia was ever going to win the game. But I did think, we were a chance with Stark, Hazelwood, and Cummins. If they get the new ball moving around and they hit their spots, maybe they get a couple of early wickets and they give us a sniff. I actually thought we'd never actually be able to finish them off. But I did envisage, look, Australia, they could sneak a few early wickets and make this a bit uncomfortable for England. Well, certainly wasn't uncomfortable. England 2 for 126 after 11.4 overs. Sorry for those of you getting up on a Sunday morning and hearing these figures. It's horrific stuff. It's, losing Bert Newton and Alan Davidson and Ashley Mallett in 24 hours wasn't bad enough. This has certainly added to it. So Jason Roy, 22 off 20. Joss Butler, 71 not out of 32 deliveries. He was playing on a different universe, not a different pitch. If you're watching Marvel movies, he's in some quantum reality, Joss Butler, playing on an absolute road. He hit 5 sixes. Bairstow came in and iced it, 16 off 11. Zampa and Agar got a wicket each. Roy to Zampa, LBW, and Milan caught behind off Agar. I must admit, I sort of went to bed with about 10 overs, 10 runs to spare, and listened to the finish in bed. Astonishing performance by Butler.
Yeah, I mean, now that I'm thinking back on it, I realise as well, I said that at the innings break I gave us a chance. I have this distinct memory of when the players came back out, I thought there was another 2 or 3 minutes before they were due out. And I suddenly saw them coming back out, and my thought was, oh, no. And I think it was my brain knowing that the innings break was my safe space, that we still had a chance then, and reality was coming at me like a freight train. I was like, oh, I thought I had 3 more minutes of relative happiness. And gosh, it was, I don't know, you were hoping like for the first couple of balls to really scythe around and for it to look like there's something really going to happen here. And my hope dissipated very, very quickly. Like Australia didn't bowl absolutely terribly those first couple of overs, but there was nothing in the wicket for them like the English were getting out of it. So, and towards the end, it reminded me of State of Origin game in the years gone by when Queensland would be thrashing New South Wales with Wally Lewis. I was starting to almost cheer on England because I just wanted it to be over. Like every time Butler hit a 6, I was just getting more and more gobsmacked. And the end was one of the quickest endings to a game of cricket I've ever seen. It went from they needed 50 till they won in about 3 minutes. It was just it was comical by the end.
Yeah, look at Australia's bowling figures. Mitch Stark, 3 overs, none for 37. They really took him on. Pat Cummins, 1 over, none for 14. Ashton Agar, 2.4 overs, 1 for 15. Ironically, he was probably our best bowler, despite the fact that I think he shouldn't be selected. Adam Zampa, 3 overs, 1 for 37. It was just there was nothing positive to say about our fielding performance. We were outmatched. Butler was so good to watch. I mean, that was Butler at his best. We haven't, English fans would say we haven't seen the best of him the last 12 months. Well, that was Butler at his best. And just the worst possible performance from Australia, getting beaten and getting hammered. It's diabolical.
Yeah, there's not much more to say. I mean, I want to defend Agar. I mean, you've made the point. He was our best bowler. He was our second top scorer. I feel bad to, for us to blast the bloke. Normally, if that's the game, the bloke is the best bowler and the second top scorer, you'd say he had a good game.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not blasting him. I'm
No, no, no. I
blasting
know.
this
I know. I'm just saying.
this
Yeah.
uncertainty around our T20 side that it's the bloody World Cup and we don't know what structure our team should have. I mean, that seems to me farcical that you can be the biggest tournament of this format and still not sure how you're going to structure your team. And you're now 3 games in. And, Justin Langer. And I mean, he'll need those inspirational quotes that he's been pumping out after last night's performance because he will be at a low ebb right now, and the whole team will be because if they come up against a good side in the semi-finals, they'll fancy their chances.
Mate, I know exactly what they'll say. It's textbook easy to say. They're just going to say, we're going to put this game out of our minds. We got thrashed by a top quality side. But the beauty of this tournament is that we're still alive. We've had 2 good wins. That game, we can't do anything about it now. It's very disappointing. We've got to look ahead to the Bangladesh game, and we're still very much in this tournament. And it's true, though. I mean,
it's not, though. It's worse, though, because now we're coming up against 2 sides that have recent good form against us. Our nemesis, Bangladesh, who towed us up 4-1 in a T20 series. And then the Windies beat us, 4-1? Or was it 4-1 or 5-0?
I think it's
something.
4-1. I think.
So, we've got coming up against 2 teams now that will be thinking, we fancy our chances against this average Australian outfit. Now Martin Lawrence has put a question in on Channel 7 Sunrise this morning. I heard there was a question: will this result have an impact on team confidence for the Ashes? And I'll give you my opinion, Martin, and then we'll see what Paul's got to say. But I actually think it does. I think, ironically, that was so bad that it actually does give England a boost. And it does, I think, add to England's confidence. They'll be thinking now, this Australian team is vulnerable. They are not the team they were even a few years ago. They're out of form. Some of their bowlers aren't the same. I think the Ashes squad will think now, we can go to Australia and win.
They're very different formats, and this bears no resemblance on this. This has no bearing on what is going to happen come the first Test match at the Gabba. Our boys. Sorry, I was suddenly pretending to be Tim Payne. No, that's what they will say, and I don't think it actually makes a whole lot of difference either, because it's a one-off thing. They thrashed us. They're better than us at T20 cricket. Hazelwood and Co can always go the journey in a T20 game. Half of the players won't be involved. So, no, I don't think it makes much of a difference.
Yeah, no, I disagree. I think English cricket will be looking at Australian cricket now and thinking they're vulnerable, even though they're different formats, even though there's different players. The bowling attack will be virtually the same. You add in a Lyon for Zampa. There'll be a few changes in personnel, but still, they'll feel that Warner's still vulnerable outside off stump. But yeah, they are different formats, but I think it will really give them a boost. And it sounds like Tim Payne's in the firing line after his comments during the week or last week about the Poms. So yeah, just shattering. Any other sort of news that jump out at you that you want to touch on before we end this broadcast, Paul? We'll go through the questions in a sec.
Just to mention the death of Alan Davidson, that for those of you who don't know of him or have only heard of him as a name, he died aged 92. And the reason I'm just making the point is he may well be, he's in the conversation as the second best cricketer that Australia has ever produced. And he's regarded as a wonderful cricketer, but I don't think he's quite got the reputation that he should have. He has, in Test cricket, he had a batting average of 24 and a half. In first-class cricket, his batting average was 33, which often is more relevant back in those days because they played such a high percentage of Shield games relative to Test games. So his Test batting figures aren't much worse than Moeen Ali with the bat. And with the ball, basically he has the best bowling average ever. If you put 2 caveats: 1, we're ignoring pre-World War I, where the pitches were very, very different. And 2, if you only had a career of 80 or 90 or 100 wickets, then there's a couple that are better. But he took 186 wickets at an average of 20.5 with a batting average of 24.5. He was known for his extraordinarily good fielding. Gary Sobers, who many regard as the greatest all-rounder of all time, always said, and Sobers himself averaged 57, always said the bowler that he found most difficult to face was Alan Davidson. And his average in India with the ball, I haven't got it off the top of I haven't got it in front of me, but I think off the top of my head, having seen it the other night on Twitter, was 15 in Test cricket in India. He was the complete player. As Bill Laurie said last night, if he was around today, you couldn't pay him enough in the IPL. He would just be absolute box office. So for him to die at 92, it's very sad. He had a wonderful innings, was still very active till late in life, still opened the bowling in a charity game just a couple of years ago. And so, as I said, if I was going to pick my best Australian side ever, there are only a few certainties. He is one of them. He's underrated by the general public, and that's a great pity, but wonderful life, and very sad to hear of his death.
Yeah, absolutely. Very nice words there, Paul. I used to cricket coach with a few of Alan Davidson's teammates, and the reverence that they used to hold Davo in was very clear. They used to talk about him a lot in the lunch breaks and the sheds. Just about, I think, his legacy goes beyond his playing career as well. He made a huge contribution post playing days, and just a phenomenal player, administrator, coach, and he'll be sorely missed. I picked my all-time Australian side in 2019, and I tweeted it out, and I was glad someone found that tweet, and Davidson was in there. Just
Oh,
to
well
give
done.
you
I didn't think you had that in you. That's really impressive.
Thank you. I know my history. Just to give you an idea of the sort of impact he could have in a game, let's look at the first test, the tied test against the West Indies, the first ever tied test of 1960. In the West Indies' first innings, Alan Davidson took 5 for 135 in the West Indies total of 453. Then Australia replied with 505. Alan Davidson, 44. So he's already had a great match. But then in the West Indies' second innings, where they were bowled out for 284, which gave Australia a shot at winning the game, Davidson took 6 for 87. So he's taken 11 wickets and scored 44. Not a bad match. Then set 233 to win. Davo comes in. He comes in with the score 6 for 92, smashes a whirlwind 80 before being run out. And we know what happened. It was a tied result, but that just gives you a measure of his brilliance. And actually, there is a lot of footage of the tied test available. There's DVDs and stuff, and you can watch Davo bat. He was a swashbuckling batter, and yeah, go and find it. I used to have that video growing up of the tied test. So I saw a lot of Davo's innings.
And the remarkable thing is that despite that bowling effort of 11 wickets in the match, his average in the tied test is almost identical to his career average. So that was basically his standard with the ball, which is just mind-blowing. And I'll conclude with this. Anyone from England watching, this is not a bitter Australian. This is just a thought that has occurred to me. I promise you it's not a bitter Australian. In all honesty, Alan Davidson was a better cricketer than anyone England has ever produced, ever.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
We got one in there. So tonight in the T20 World Cup, Afghanistan take on Namibia in the first game of the evening. Can't wait for that. I think Afghanistan should hammer Namibia. And then India take on New Zealand at 1 a.m. Vital game for both teams, especially India after that loss to Pakistan. Let's go through the comments now, Paul, before we leave. Condi Rice, clearly a palm hammering. Thank you. Upbeat? No, not upbeat. Martin, I'm expecting a couple of upset hosts. I'm upset, but also I feel slightly vindicated because on Cricket Unfiltered, I've been saying how bad Australia is at T20 cricket, and this World Cup wasn't turning out that way, but it's finally come true.
Peter Dutton, if you're watching, could you please cancel Menez's passport? Thank you.
Jose, Australia's net run rate has taken a beating.
Yes.
Dutton's probably listening to this. We'll all be on the surveillance. ASIO have got a feed of this. So Jose, you're right. No guarantee that they will win both. I agree. I would be surprised if Australia wins another game in this World Cup.
And we'll lose the Ashes 7-0 as well, won't we, Menez?
Yep. Exactly. Condi Rice should try. Absolutely. Again, Australia just have to be fearless. We've kept our armory in the kit bag. Go to church, Menez, and pray. Well, you're right. I mean, there's no hope for this team. I don't even think prayer would do anything. Yep. This was Jose, it was a meek surrender. As Australia has developed a soft centre that hasn't existed since the early 80s. Interesting because, one of Justin Langer's sort of mandates when he came in was that he wanted to get rid of this soft center, that there were too many collapses. And in fact, there's a famous net session where, because he was sick of the batters collapsing all the time, he said, all right, what we're going to do is you're all going to bat. And if you get out in the nets, you're all going to have to swap nets and rotate, so to sort of simulate getting out in a real game. And
Yes. Did you
Kawaj was
have to
very
bring that
annoyed
up?
at that.
One of the stupidest coaching techniques. When I coach sprinters, every time they don't run under 10 flat, I make them do another lap until eventually they start running the 100 under 10 flat. Because it's all just mental. It's just all desire. That's fine.
So do you think Australia has a soft centre though?
No, I just think that they're not as good at T20 cricket as England. And I get Condi's point. I suppose it's that we've had since that mid 80s period where Australia was they had a soft centre and a soft edge and a soft other edge and everything was soft except for Alan Border. Since then, the rise and rise of the team has been so strong and got to the point where for so many years it dominated that anything compared to that looks soft. I think this is just we've no longer got a great cricket side. We haven't got a bad one. It's just a normal side, and sometimes these things happen.
Yeah, I think the test side is toughening up. I think you're right. It's more about skill than a soft center. But I actually think in the T20 format, we do have a soft center. And it's not, it's a confidence thing. I just don't think there's that inner belief when we get in tight situations in T20 cricket that we're going to win. And, we fell over the line in the first game, Stephen Bradbury style. Second game was more convincing, but we've reverted back to the norm for this game. All righty. Well, Paul, look, that's it. We've gone for over 30 minutes. So thanks for everybody that's watched or listened. We're going to release the audio on a couple of podcast feeds, but you can watch these broadcasts on Twitter and YouTube. Go and subscribe to our Twitter page, our YouTube page, so you can be notified of these live broadcasts. And, we're going to make an effort to do one of these after every Australian game with the World Cup. Thank goodness, there's only 2 more to go. After that, do you agree that with Watson, that Australia's best T20 players don't play enough matches together? Well, last question from Jose. He's spot on there. The part of the problem is Australia's never got our full side on the park, and it's definitely the third most important format in terms of the way the teams are selected. And yeah, I think it's certainly a weakness.
It is, and we've deprioritized the format for years, but I can't criticize them for having done that over the years because we all go on about the primacy of Test cricket. The times that they've deprioritized it have tended to be for the betterment of Test cricket. So with the way the schedule is, it is hard to have it all. And to be honest, I think the way England played last night, no matter what Australia had done over the years, they were just unbeatable. I mean, anyone who's stayed up in England, if you have watched this and it's now 25-2, don't forget the clocks go back at 2 o'clock. You've got an extra hour tonight. Congratulations. It was a phenomenal performance. I think it would have beaten pretty much anyone last night.
All righty, I agree. Well, look, let's end this. Condi writes, where's Jaleesa? Hopefully asleep, getting some well-earned rest after a big week for her on Channel 10. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Paul, have a great day. Go and forget about the cricket. Get some fresh air. I'm going to turn on the WBBL. There's a match happening. There's actually 3 games on today, so nothing like just getting back on the horse. When you've had a rough night, just get back on the horse, and hopefully the Thunder lose. All righty, everybody. Thanks for watching and listening.
Bye.
Arrivederci.